What's up, swimmers and swammers? I'm Garrett McCaffrey, and joining us today is the Peterson family head swimming coach at Notre Dame. He's Chris Lindauer, and this is the SwimSwam podcast. Chris, thank you so much for making time to join us today.
Thanks, Garrett. Appreciate it.
Let's start with that title, the Peterson family head swimming coach. And we had an article on SwimSwam before you were even named as the head coach that they had received an endowment to help support the salary of that head coaching position. Was that something that was part of negotiations or something that they just told you about as you committed on to become the head coach there at Notre Dame?
Yeah, it's a good question. And Carl Peterson is an alum and a benefactor here at Notre Dame. So just super supportive and very thankful for his endowment. It's something that going into the process, I knew that they were endowing and going to be supporting this position. So it worked out where he was an alum and a swimmer for Tim Welsh. And so just to get his support and to share his vision, his story about what Notre Dame swimming means to him, just meant the world to me. I was able to have a conversation with him and just sit back and listen, and I thought that was very valuable in just learning the history of Notre Dame swimming.
Obviously a warm welcome to kind of get you, a little bit settled there in South Bend, but what else made this position the right fit for you?
That's a great question. When I looked at a lot of different factors for me and my family, because this really ultimately was a family move, the biggest thing is just the community, and you said it, a warm welcome. Right off the bat through the interview process, whether it was over the phone or eventually in person, there was just something about it. And a lot of that comes down to the administration. Julie Schreiber, my sport administrator, has just been phenomenal for me. Very welcoming, down to earth, and super supportive in the vision and the culture we're trying to create here. So that was a big indicator of just the quality of people here at Notre Dame that I was immediately attracted to. And the administration as a whole, starting with Jack Swarbrick, our athletic director, his commitment to all sports here at Notre Dame is something that I value and is really important to me in this process. So those were the main factors, but really too, just all of the resources and what Notre Dame means to me, the tradition, the history of excellence, the alumni base, the potential between the high-level, high-profile academics that we have here at Notre Dame, the athletic brand, the ND, the logo. It's the most representative college logo in college athletics. So there's a lot of factors that came into play, but at the end of the day, it just felt like the right fit at the right time.
As an undergrad at Louisville, academics was a big thing for you, and you did extremely well in academics and on that side of the coin, so to speak. What else makes you the right fit for this position?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's the hunger and the vision. I knew that I always wanted to be a head coach, and I knew that going through the process and doing it the right way, learning the right way, and taking my time. And I think I was very fortunate to do it consistently in one place. But over the years, building those athletic relationships and having those experiences with our student athletes, seeing, from walk-on to Olympian success stories and being able to partner with them, that passion, that journey, embracing those moments, that to me is what coaching is all about. So when the opportunity opened up and I had a chance, and obviously speaking with Arthur, who was a mentor to me, my own coach, he looked at me and over the years, when Arthur talks, I listen, and he's like, you're ready. And that just validated that. And so I knew at that point, like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah. So if you get the thumbs up from Arthur, one of the best coaches in the country, in the world, that's obviously a good thing. But the transition is still, there's differences between being an assistant coach and a head coach. How do you have to change in order to be a great head coach versus how you were able to be as the assistant?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, as an assistant, I think you're more of a position player, position coach. Obviously, at Louisville, I was more sprint focused, working with the sprint group, even though I coached everything over my tenure at Louisville. But it's more into management mode. I need to make sure that I'm available, as much as I possibly can. And that's not only to our student athletes, but to our staff, and then working with our administration as well. There's a lot of moving pieces that go on behind the scenes. You have support staff, nutrition, strength and conditioning, all of those things, making sure we're managing those appropriately. We're providing and setting up, organizing those resources for our student athletes, as well as, like I said, just being available for our staff, make sure I'm quote unquote coaching the coaches and meeting their needs and being able to sit down and talk with them about their goals and their aspirations and how I can support them. And then obviously with the student athletes, I think being a position coach player, from that standpoint, you kind of work with a pocket of student athletes that you're familiar with. For me, it was the sprint group. Even though I coached everybody, I think as a head coach, you need to be visible and available and be able to listen to all athletes, about concerns across the board, whether it's about in the pool or in the classroom or socially, whatever it is.
Yeah. And I don't know if there's a specific piece of advice that Arthur would give you now as you're transitioning, but is there anything specific that you see that he brings as a head coach that you want to emulate and really kind of carry that with you as a head coach now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and it's for me, it's common sense, is just surround yourself with good people, and that first and foremost starts with the staff, so look for characteristics and values that are important to me, and so surrounding yourself with good people, and then as well as sharing that with your student athletes. And that's a culture piece. I think culture development at Louisville was a crucial part to their improvement rate there and the success we were able to have there as well. So, culture development and really, really pouring into that family aspect and that family piece is super important to me. So, but bottom line, it's finding good people and working with them and dreaming big with them and also sharing that with the closest around you, like our student athletes.
Well, let's kind of jump to that part of it then and talk about your two hires as assistant coaches, Kameron Chastain and Kelsi Dahlia. Let's start with Kameron. What makes him a great coach and what makes him the right fit to help you with this transition to Notre Dame?
Yeah, Cam, for me, there's a few characteristics that were definitely a priority in my selection for my staff. And first and foremost is trust. I think that value is super important. Somebody that I know has my back, but also has the rest of our staff's back and can also work well with trust with our student athletes. So Cam, fortunate enough to work with him for 7 years on deck at Louisville, and then also coach Cam. So I know his work ethic first and foremost. And then I also know, that he's somebody that I can go to and that I can trust. At the same time, he's someone that will come to me and say, hey, Chris, listen, why don't we look at it like this? Or what about this approach? And kind of challenge it a little bit. And I embrace that, I encourage that, bringing new experiences, new opportunities, new ideas to the table, and letting Cam grow as a coach while also getting that value, for me, was a no-brainer. I think Cam has a very innovative mind, and he's hungry. He's driven by that student-athlete relationship and that partnership piece to pursue success, both in and out of the pool.
Yeah. And then Kelsi, she's obviously had wild success in the water as an athlete, just recently retired and is stepping on deck. What have you seen from her that gives you faith that she's going to be good in that transition to coach?
Listen, I think with Kelsi, and many people who know her know this, beyond all the successes she's had in the pool, and we all know those things, bottom line, Garrett, she's a great person. She's a wonderful human being. I love Kelsi. I think she is one of the most humble people I know, giving, faith-based, and just a great leader for our sport. So it was a no-brainer. Immediately when I knew this was happening for me here at Notre Dame, she was the first name that popped up to me. And having the opportunity, again, to coach her over the past 10 years, to work with her, to see her grow, from an incoming freshman to her professional career and see everything in life in between, those traits and the value that she learned through all of those different things makes her so valuable and such a great asset for Notre Dame. So it was a no-brainer for me.
So let's do the same question, but with you. And I know that's kind of tough because you got to brag about yourself, and that's not always easy. I understand. But what would Kelsi and Cam, or even your swimmers at Louisville, tell the Notre Dame swimmers about why this is such a great position to be in with you as the head coach? What makes you? I mean, and the SwimSwam comments aren't always friendly, and they seem to be just glowing about you too. So that's usually a pretty good sign as well. What makes you such a great coach? Give us a good picture of what you do so well.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think the biggest thing that I would say with my athletes is over the years is that I care about them. Like, I truly care about them and their journey, and doing my best to treat them as equal as I can through their process here as a student athlete, and meet them and their demands and their needs wherever they're at. Whether it's helping them in life. A lot of times I view myself not even as a swimming coach, but as a life coach. And I think we almost need to rephrase sometimes our title, because a lot of the things that come to our table, yes, the impact may be swimming related or have something to do with swimming down the road, but a lot of it's just life, and just being able to listen, I think, is key. I think a lot of times people speak, but they're not actually heard. So for me, I think I come across genuine and with a heart that cares and truly wants to be there to support our student athletes through whatever they're going through, and also hold them accountable to their goals and objectives that they have.
Let's get a little better picture as well of you and your training thoughts. I know that you were the sprint coach at Louisville, but what are some of the things that you really want to make sure are a big piece and a big focus as you set up the training plans there at Notre Dame?
For me, is engagement. Bottom line, it's engagement. I easily get bored myself as a coach. So staying engaged on deck as a coach is important to me. So if I write a practice or we write a practice and it's not flowing, it doesn't work, and we're in zombie mode or they're not engaged, what's the point? So I think with this generation specifically, I think they always go back to the why. Why are we doing this? And so really communicating up front, I'll take the extra 5-10 minutes out of practice all day to communicate, okay, this is the set, this is why we're doing it, this is how it applies to the specific training, the cycle, the breakdown, everything that goes into that. And then this is how it specifically applies to your performances in the pool, to competition. So really focused on engagement, quality, strategy-based training. So if we're doing 100 pace work, not only are we getting that quality, but we're working in our actual strategy in that work. Takeout mode, turn mode, back half mode, finish mode, all of these different gears that we're really focused on and staying engaged. And then back to the components. I think the athleticism piece is crucial, especially in short course yards with college swimming. Being as athletic as we possibly can, both in and out of the pool. But that's the environment we want to create here. It's exciting. It's supportive. The amount we had practice this morning, the amount of Go Irishes that I heard throughout the morning, it just gives you goosebumps. It gets you excited, and it gets the kids engaged, our student athletes engaged. And they get a little taste of it, and over time they get hungrier and hungrier for more. Then all of a sudden things are rolling, confidence is high, and we have some momentum to build off of.
Can you give us an example set of an engaging set? And I could give you more parameters if you want, as far as, a sprint focus, 100 pace focus. I've never heard it as a takeout, but I understand that's like front end speed, I'm assuming.
Yes. Yeah. So like a 100 pace set that I like to commonly work with our sprinters, or 100 guys, and worked with Mallory and Kelsi and Andre Barna. We'll do a series or a sequence is what I would call it. And it's basically off the block. And we'll go a 35 takeout. So this is long course meters. And in preparation for world championships, we've done this set a few times. Do a 35 takeout. Sometimes this will be suited. Sometimes it will be unsuited. Just to get into that rhythm, what that free speed feels like. Repetition, really at the appropriate gear that we want to hit. I think a lot of times when we do quality, when we call it 100 pace, Is it really? Are we actually clicking and firing at that gear? So 35 takeout, and then we'll take a little bit of easy and we'll work some 30s. So basically facing the 50 wall, we'll go 15 in fast. So we're working the second 25. And then we'll work that turn coming off into the third 25 off the 50 wall. And we can do a 30. We can extend that to a 40. So it's 15 in, third 25, full 25. And then we can also, we'll go and take some easy, and then we'll go and do the full back half 50. We might rep that once. We might rep it 2 or 3 times, hit it back half 50. And then through that, they can obviously simulate and work coming off that 50 wall, what that third 25 looks like. What are they doing with their legs? And then approaching the fourth 25. What does finish mode look like? Is there a breathing pattern change? Are we putting our head down at 15 meters? Whatever specific strategy for the student athlete that we're trying to work, it's tailored specifically to them. And then we'll take even more easy and we'll come back and we'll hit that 425. So we're going to microscope it and really focus in on that last little bit. Okay, now let's break it down. Here's this 425. When it comes down to it, when it matters the most, when you're head to head, what are you going to do that's going to make the difference? So that's an example of a pace qualities type set that builds in the strategy of the work we're trying to do.
And you start that fourth 25 from mid pool without a wall so that you have to create your own speed and then finish.
Correct. Yep.
Cool. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. I know the viewers will get into that too. That's a great set.
Awesome.
So let's kind of shift from the training focus into that culture focus. And you talked about the Louisville culture being like a family. And that's wonderful. But just like a family, there's usually also some times when you don't like each other. And I tell athletes all the time that being a good teammate is harder than being a good friend because you see different sides and you have to deal with things like a family. So how do you set up that culture in a healthy way where there's room for, not always liking each other. There's room for the culture to be healthy, but also a culture that pushes and that, tests boundaries and is able to really get the best, even if that best and that pushing of the boundaries looks different for each individual. How do you set up a culture that is able to embrace all of that in a healthy way?
Yeah, I think the foundation of that is communication. Communication to me is the foundation of almost everything we're doing. So it's communicating often and frequently and staying consistent with our communication. So it's finding a platform that we can build that communication off of. What is Notre Dame and where are we at now? And what do we need to directly focus on? And that's really the student athlete experience and the support and appreciation for one another and their goals and their aspirations. So what does that look like? And communicating that frequently. It's a simple thing of having a post-practice meeting this morning. We had VO2 this morning. We did a shout-out series. It's something little like that takes 5 minutes, but the value of that, and you do it consistently over time. You have student athletes making shout-outs. You could tell they were like, okay, what do I do? Like, it was a little foreign,
Can
It's
you
like,
explain a shout-out series?
What's that?
Can you explain what the shout-out series
is? So pretty much as a coach, it's like, oh, hey, Susie, I'm shouting out Susie because she did a phenomenal job this morning. She came in, she was mentally, feeling a little rough, a little sore, but she pushed that aside. She focused on what she could win and what she could get better in, and she had a successful set because of that. And then it kind of sets this train or this domino effect of compliments and support for one another. Like, oh, well, I'm proud of Josh because he hit that third 50 and he looked like he was about to throw up, but he battled through and pushed through it. And all of those little things, small compliments like that, I think is what gets us closer together. And just having individual meetings with our student athletes, sitting here and listening. Okay, what's the adversity that you hit? What were the traps that you fell into last year? Okay, how can I take that information as the head coach and our staff will sit in on these meetings with us and then provide opportunities to become closer, whether if it's a men's and, typically a lot of situations with a combined program, sometimes you'll get a little bit of division between men and women. All right, well, we're a combined program. What are different things we can do? Maybe it's a full team retreat. Maybe it's something when we go to training camp. There's different things and throughout the year that we can implement that really just builds that family culture. And I think too, obviously, like you mentioned with the family, like, listen, I have an older brother. Like, my brother and I, we fought all the time. It's part of being a family. But I love him. He loves me. We respect each other, and we support each other. So it's reiterating that over and over again. We're not always going to get along. We're not always going to see eye to eye, but we're going to listen. We're going to respect each other, and we're going to work together through self-discipline, love, and care for one another. And I think that's the starting point. And then where that takes us and how that fosters and how we grow that, I think culture is constantly evolving. You don't want to just, you have your foundation, but you don't always want to stay with the same culture for this year's team. What it will be next year, there might be similarities, but we also might have to adjust some things as well. So
I think you talked a lot about that big team, the combined program, but a lot of people talk about a combined program really being 3 teams, a men's team, a women's team, and a combined team. How do you foster a healthy culture for the women's team separately from the men's team and vice versa?
Yeah, I think, I'll give the retreat example. Team retreat, we go and we spend a couple nights on a retreat, and we have the men's for one night and the women's for another night. So you're having the men break down. They're talking about goals, what specifically they want it to do as a team. We're doing captain selection. We're opening up and sharing some adversity. We're getting to know one another. And then you have some rollover where the men and women will have the full day together, and then the men will leave, and then you have the women come in and they go through the same process, goal setting, all of that stuff. So I think it's, to your point, you do have that combined culture as a whole, but then you have the subcultures, and how we tailor that specifically with our women based off what we learn about them and compare that what we learn about our men, different things. We might have similarities, and we might have to implement different activities, whether it's class dinners, little things like that throughout the year, gender-specific dinners, over at Kelsi's place with the women or whatever. Little things like that, I think, go a long way in identifying the different cultures and then learning how to also find a safe place and the right place to merge them to make sure we're getting the best out of both worlds.
Yeah. So since you're already there and having, would you say 6 weeks that you've been kind of working with them already? Has anything surprised you about the program, good or bad? Anything that you didn't really realize during the hiring and interview process that you're kind of on deck now, like, oh, wow, I didn't realize this?
Yeah, I think, I think we're super talented. I really do. I think this team is eager and hungry. I think last year was an extremely hard year for this program. And so I'm excited for these guys. Like, they are chomping at the bit to get back to work. And so, I think just with the Zoom call, we had a full team meeting last night, and it was just so exciting just to see their eyes kind of light up. Like, the expectation, the standard when you come back in the fall, wherever you're at doing whatever, is to come back ready and prepared, and ready to hit the ground running. So just to hear that communication, and they're like, listen, coach, it was nice to have a meeting, and that goes a long ways, and it goes back to that communication. So I'm excited because I do believe our student athletes here are super talented. And on top of that, they're eager and hungry. I feel like they have a lot left to prove. I feel like, you look at the past couple of years, COVID year, I mean, everything that went with that. Then you have the post-COVID year. Then you have the coaching change, like just some consistency, some stability. They're super excited about that. I think certainly there's unique circumstances with Notre Dame admissions, with it being a high-profile academic institution. Recruiting will be interesting and will be a challenge. And I'm super excited to learn with admissions here on identifying and evaluating the right prospective student athletes. But I also think it can be used as a tool and as a positive thing to find that niche of high caliber student athletes that are really committed in the classroom. So learning through that landscape of the process with admissions is definitely interesting and different than what I'm used to, but I don't think that it's a bad thing either.
Yeah. Along those lines, I know that a lot of universities have, with high academic standards, give the athletic programs a couple, passes. They give them a couple, tickets where they can get an athlete in who might have just missed getting let into the university and might not have met all of the rigorous academic standards. At Notre Dame, I think that came to light even when Brian Kelly was recently changing jobs and leaving Notre Dame, and just talking about how that role and that job is tough because you have to get a certain level of student in there to be an athlete. Is that the case? There's no real passes. They have to kind of meet those academic requirements first before they can even have the option to be on the athletic teams?
Yeah, that's correct. There's no passes, and I think admissions, their goal is to make sure that the prospective student athlete is going to be set up for success here at Notre Dame. I don't think they want to admit somebody that doesn't have a background, an academic background that's going to help them thrive here and be better, student athlete when they get here. So looking at rigor, things like that, class load, incoming, what sort of courses have they taken, AP courses, really breaking it down, evaluating transcripts, and just making sure that it's appropriate fit, with Notre Dame, because the last thing they want is having someone come in and just skate by and just basically survive. We want thriving student athletes here.
Do you think that limits you at all in the ACC, or I think our sport's a little bit lucky in the fact that we tend to have a lot of good students and student athletes. Do you think that limits your recruiting or your ability to kind of climb up the ACC at all?
I don't think so. I think it's going to take some diligent work in a different way than probably what I've been used to. And I think I can using it as a positive thing. Listen, this is a place where it's a top 20 university in the country, and I heard a stat the other day. It's one of the only top 20 universities where all 20 sports have been all sports have been in the top 20 in the last 6 years, So it's pretty impressive combination, and to be able to recruit with that helps out a lot. So super excited to kind of dig into that. Obviously, the calendar is here and the season is upon us. And we're already navigating through the database and trying to find the right fit and that balance between academics and athletics. But I think we can use it as a huge resource and a positive thing to get the right people here at Notre Dame.
Can you talk a little bit about the challenge that is the ACC conference these days? I know that your time at Louisville, you kind of transitioned from a couple different conferences, but for the last 5 or 6 years, you've been in the ACC. How do you see it comparing to other conferences, and what will it take to start to climb those ranks with some of the best teams in the country?
That's a great question, Gary. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but I think it's the best conference in the country. And it certainly has grown tremendously over the past few years, so we have some great programs in the ACC, and it's an honor to be able to compete with those programs, so really for us, we're going to take it one day at a time, one step at a time, and see where it takes us. It's not getting 10% better in one thing, but it's 1% better in 10 things. I believe that, obviously recruiting is a big piece and a big factor in this, in finding student athletes and prospective student athletes that want to dream big and climb the ladder and build a championship team at the ACC level and pursue building a top 10 program. So we have our work cut out for us, but we're excited about the challenge. I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't want those things. I want to be, I think it's in our nature, it's natural for us to want to compete at the highest level and embrace that challenge, so it's exciting. And I get excited. Our staff gets excited. It's like, all right, here's what we can do. Here's how we can build it. Just breaking it down, ACC scoring times, what we're looking at. And what's going to be the right fit for us, and what, class by class is super exciting. But yeah, I think I really believe, especially from an ACC conference, is the growth, the rate at which it's improved. I think it's one of the best, if not the best, conferences in the country.
Yeah. But there's no doubt it's going to take a lot of work in order to accomplish that and to be able to climb. And that competitive drive is a big factor for all swimmers. And I'm sure your athletes, just like you, want to get better. But at the same time, a lot of push, especially these days with student athletes, is making sure they're enjoying the process and having fun. What kind of things can you do? I know that some coaches, probably would shy away from the idea that swimming would be fun, but I think the coaches who are going to be successful moving forward have some idea of how to make it enjoyable. What kind of things do you do to make sure that swimming stays fun as you really go through the grind here to try to climb up the ACC?
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes back to kind of the structure of that pace set that I described earlier. That's direct engagement, where they get excited about because they know the why. So that over time, hopefully they view that as fun, even though it is extremely challenging. And embracing those moments. Like, I think with a growth mindset and the willingness to have open arms, like, I'm ready, let's go, throw it at me. Having that mindset every day, having the opportunity when you walk in these doors, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do it. Like, you want to do it, and this is whether your day, it's like kind of like being a parent. If we have bad days, we get to go home and see our kids. It resets. It can reset, and it's the same thing with the pool. Like, you walk in through those doors, you have the opportunity to have the best practice, or at least the best mindset and attitude to have the best practice that you possibly can. So I think just, again, communicating what that means and an attitude of gratitude and appreciation always takes you places. Like, when you appreciate the opportunity that you get to be at a place like Notre Dame, you get to be a student athlete, you get to do it with this family, and you get to work. There's nothing like college athletics swimming. Swimming as a sport is very individual in many ways. And then you get to college, and it's this team sport more than it's ever been. And embracing and truly valuing that experience for me, and communicating that to our student athletes, that's fun. That is fun. Accomplishing your goals, that's fun. Overcoming adversity, that's fun. We'll do different things. Like, we did a fun vertical kick set the other day. We had these little stress balls, and kind of like a baseball line when you're throwing out the baseball, warming up. And we had the center line as the middle, and then we had both swimmers on the other line, and they had to throw it and catch it. And then both sides had to catch it, and they scoot back a line, and then a little bit further. And obviously you're doing vertical kick, which is great for the legs. And it's a challenge to stabilize the core so you're not wobbling and you're trying to throw. But it's also fun. It's different. And they get to communicate with each other and cheer on each other. It got down to, it was kind of a race at the end. And the last group, was there for a little bit, struggling. And you had everybody else like, come on. And the last person would throw it, before on their very last throw, and everyone would be like, oh, and then, they caught it. Like, it was a miracle, and but those are the little things that I think it just breaks it up, some of the work. It's doing, social kick. That's one of the most popular sets, fun sets. Okay, what is social kick? Do we just have them kick together and talk about whatever? Sure. Or do we guide it? Do we got it? You're going to kick 3 100s. Here's 3 topics. You're going to switch partners every 100. The first 100, let's talk. What was your favorite Christmas present? The best Christmas you've ever got? Something fun. You're communicating that with your team, your teammate. They're learning about you. You're learning about them. It's great. The next one is, why Notre Dame? What's important to you? Why are you here? Okay, you're sharing a little bit deeper information with them. Like, what are you passionate about? What is it? And then maybe something else that we can go all over. But I think, again, that is engaging. That's an opportunity to do something different. It's fun. And you can learn something out of it as well.
Those are awesome. I know we all steal ideas, but I'm definitely going to take all of those, including that vertical kick one, just because it also fits. I'm reading a book called Why We Swim, and it fits in with the Japanese style of swimming where they're, the samurais back in the day were able to somehow shoot bow and arrows while treading water and stuff like that. So there's all sorts of benefits to it as well. It checks so many boxes, and I'm sure a lot of coaches are going to really appreciate all that insight with specific sets and stuff. And I think, the other side of it that I hope you can kind of help us with as well is the balance, because you've talked a lot about family. You talked about, being able to go home and reset once you see your kids. You've got 3 boys, and I don't know that there is a perfect balance, but this whole move was for family. So how do you make sure that stays the priority and that you're getting the time that you want there, as well as you're, driving and being so competitive as the head swim coach there in a thriving program? How do you find the right amount of time to spend at home with your wife, with the family as well?
It's a great question. And I feel like it's a never ending pursuit. It's something you have to, being married, you have to practice it. You keep working at it, and it evolves and it changes. And the best thing in my life is that I get to be a dad and a husband. Those are priority number one. And so fortunately, I married up. My wife, she's amazing. She actually sent me a text the other day. She just did a marathon in Colorado. We're originally from Denver, and it started at 12,000 feet and it descended down. And she did a phenomenal job. And she just has so many characteristics about her that I love. But she said, change your language. Instead of I should, let's take flexibility as an example. Instead of I should be better at flexibility, change it to I can, be better at flexibility. And then instead be I can be better at flexibility because. So add the because in there. So I think just little things like that, like that's a reminder, like, okay, I should get home at 5:30 tonight, or I can get home at 5:30 tonight because I'm going to make sure I'm organized, I'm structured, I have all my plans, everything in place to make that the priority, to put emphasis on that. And it's hard. It's never perfect. And I think it's understanding mutually with a family, that you're working together. You have to work at it with each other. And my kids are great. They love that dad's the head coach at Notre Dame. They love it. And I'll also have them on pool deck as much as I can. In my interview process, that was a big touching point for me. Like, I want my family involved, and Notre Dame is that's the community piece where it's been tremendous. They're like, yeah, we want the family involved. Like, this is a place that is all about family for me. So I want them involved. And in turn, then the student athletes see, oh, that's Chris as a dad. That's Chris as a husband. That makes me a little bit more approachable. I think a lot of times head coaches get looked at as these like untouchable figures, or like, oh, he's the head coach, he or she's the head coach. I'm human. I'm human too, and I have a life. And so they can see me as a dad in front of my three boys and see how crazy they are. They probably might question some of my parenting skills with the way they act sometimes. But, I think it's important to show those things. So, but anyways, I think it's constantly something you're managing and balancing and working, but just making it a priority. Making it a priority. And the number one priority for me is that. So I'll make sure of it.
Last question. And this is, hopefully a fun one because it's specifically for what you do for fun, and with all of those priorities as a coach, as a husband, as a dad. I think that a good piece to kind of talk with all coaches, and especially in our sport, we can really get kind of caught up in all those different hats or just one of those hats and kind of forget about ourselves and the self-care. What do you do for fun? What do you do for fun to kind of balance it all out a little bit?
That's correct. I think, Gary, you hit it. Like, coach's wellness, and it needs to be a priority. And I think it's something we need to focus on. And there's been initiative, but I think certainly it's an important topic. And, post-COVID with the amount of coaches, I feel like that we're losing for X, Y, and Z. And I think for me, it's just making sure that I'm also goal setting individual goals. I'm having things that I rely on and that keep me stable. So fitness is always one of those. Trying to stay busy. I did an Ironman a few years ago, and just staying active, trying to create new challenges. I've been back, probably can't tell, but I've been back in the weight room a little bit more, just trying to build some consistency in that and have some goals, build some strength. And also too, I think it's great because I can go over there with the team and maybe join in on a workout, see what they're doing, go through the pain, and get a better idea of what they're actually going through. So, but yeah, little challenges like that, but also too, for me, the joy, like my personal joy is seeing my kids play a baseball game, or even in school, with academics. My oldest was part of the beta club this year, and seeing him achieve that and being able to go to the assembly to announce that assembly, being able to go that, I mean, it's awesome. Again, it's like, what an amazing opportunity to be a dad and to enjoy that with him. And so that love, that we share with each other is what I get out of it. And it keeps me as balanced as I possibly can. And then, I think too, just taking time away with with Beth, my wife, making sure we're working on our marriage and our relationship too. I value that a lot, and that helps me stay stable too. So
it's great stuff. Seems like you're in a good place, and it really feels like Notre Dame has got a good coach leading the way here. So, Chris, I really appreciate your time and insight. I learned a ton in this 40 minutes or so hopefully the viewers did as well, and just really appreciate you making the time for it.
Thank you, Garrett. Appreciate it, and go Irish.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.